All right, so I've chosen my electronics, got them installed, and I put the oil in the shocks. For the servo, I'm using a Savox servo. It's the SC1267. And for the radio, I'm using a DX4 by Spektrum and an SR410 receiver, Spektrum receiver. The speed controller is the RS Spec by Tekin. It's a very small speed controller, which works out really good in here. And the motor is, oh, I got that sticking up. Motor is actually a Novak Vulcan. Of course, Novak is out of business now, but I thought, you know, that would be pretty fitting to, well, not because they're out of business, but just because Novak is kind of a, well, you know, when I think of when I used to race when I was a kid, Novak was a big deal. To have a Novak speed controller was a really big deal. I had a Futaba speed controller, and all I wanted was that orange speed controller. So yeah, got the Novak 17.5 brushless censored motor in here. So it should do really well. Now, I did run into a little problem, and that problem now is, now that I have the antenna mounted where it says to mount it, right there, I'm having a lot of trouble getting this body on because it doesn't want to go over the antenna. So what I'm going to have to do is push this antenna forward, try to get it through that hole if I can. Yeah, it's kind of a pain. There we go. I got it. It's just a little bit too much, a little bit more of a pain than I would have wanted, I guess, right? But not too awfully terrible. Now, I did run the wires, the motor wires. I don't know if you can see here. Let me take this back off so I can show you. Everything is enclosed, so the motor wires really need to come. If you look close in here, you might be able to see them. There's a hole in the tub there, and they go in that hole and they exit through the rear. Can you see that? And then I just went ahead and soldered them onto the motor here. So I don't have a plug going to the motor. It's just a direct solder. Soldered directly to the ESC and then directly to the motor. Let me see if I can get this back on. This was kind of a pain here. Maybe it'll get easier as the more I do it. Maybe not. Thankfully, I will not have to be doing this very much. The sensor motor, the sensor wire for the motor, I didn't bother putting it through the same hole as the 3 motor wires, and mainly because, well, there's not enough room really through that hole. It would be really tight. And I really don't like having the sensor wire run with the actual 3 motor wires anyway. So I went ahead and it's just kind of laid over. It's a flat wire, it doesn't take up much space, and it'll just fit nicely. The body will go over it. The lip of the body will just kind of bend that wire down along the back of the chassis, tub, I should say. And it's not a problem. It actually fits just fine right there. So I'm gonna lock these into place, get everything locked on, latch that. Let me put my body clip on. So there it is. All ready. Oh, I gotta mention, for the battery, I got a whisker in my mouth. For the battery, I'm just using, it's a Venom battery. and it's a LIPO is what they call it, the LIPO series, whatever. It's a LIPO, it's a 60C, 2S LIPO, 7.4 volt, and it's a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. So I've chosen this battery because it has this type of connector. It just has the bullet connector things on the battery. And the ESC that I have, I pulled it off of one of our racing buggies, so I already had that type of connector set up on the ESC. So you can see them sticking out the back here. I've got 2 bullet connectors, and I know that red is positive and blue is negative. So when I have the battery in here, it actually fits pretty nicely. You got to kind of pull these wires out of the way at first. I go ahead and get the negative in first. Well, I said it was easy. You got to have the wires arranged correctly before you do this. There we go. Okay, now, before I hook this up, let me point out, there is a recess right here. If you want to use something like Dean's connectors, this recess is where you would run your battery wire, and then you would just plug it in, put the battery, you'd push the wires back in there, and you'd be done. But for me, I don't want to use Dean's. I just want to use these because they're already on the speed controller, and well, I don't feel like put new ones on. I do have a switch inside. Let me turn on the radio. I do have a switch inside the buggy, but I am not using it. I'm just leaving it turned on. So here you can see that's how the battery, there it is. So all ready to go. Once I put on the battery door, I'm good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this all tidied up. I've got a few wires that I want to tidy up a little bit too with some zip ties, and I'll have this thing ready and we'll get a running video going.